Say what you will about the explosion of diagnoses and the CDC's overly broad definition, but that's a lot of people. 1 in 6? We can't afford to waste 1 person in 6 in a country where competitive position in the world is declining and where complexity is exploding. The world needs everyone's talent, everyone's contribution, everyone's unique way of experiencing the world. Meanwhile, the National Governors Association estimates that 54 million Americans live with a disability. Of these 54 million, only 20% are employed or even seeking employment, compared to about 70% of everyone else. The governors also remind us that more than 600,000 scientists and engineers in this country have a diagnosed disability. That's 17% of our scientists and engineers. And that some of the top innovators in the country have disabilities, including the CEOs of Ford Motor Company, Apple, Xerox, Turner Television. I see Northwest Center didn't make the list. Must be an oversight. Spending yesterday with Monica Holloway, our featured speaker today. I think that you're going to be very, very interested in her story. We spent the day looking at Northwest Center and sharing experiences. I think you're in for a real treat. And at Monica's request, she's thinking the best way to introduce her is to show you this short video trailer about her work. After which, please welcome Monica Holloway.
To help you calm down before you come up to talk to the most amazing room full of people. Being that he tells me these are my Waldo glasses, so I have to wear them. I just want to say the heart in this room and what I saw yesterday at the Northwest Center. I spent, as Tom said, the day with Tom, and I didn't just meet Tom. I met so many people. Both working, I got to see the package and assembling warehouse where they were doing literally the same coffee that is different this year. It's not going to be the same, I'm going to give it a Starbucks plug, but anyway, packaging these holiday gift boxes that I buy. And it gave me such a list to know who was packaging these boxes, but not just packaging them, but doing it well. I got to go to see the industrial laundry facility, and again, just blown away by what's possible. I'm going to go to my paper so I don't forget to say all the amazing things I want to say about the center. And you can, I do have a son, obviously with autism that you saw in the video, but and I hope to believe that I would be interested in this center whether my son had autism or not, but he does have autism, so in that way I'm very lucky. I fight the fight because it's in my home and it's in the very heart of me, my child. So I appreciate you coming, and I also appreciate the idea that the whole world, which Tom, I knew this, but Tom put it in such a way that made so much more sense to me. That the whole world deserves civil rights. Everybody in this country matters. Every child deserves a place to go to school, I know that. But every person deserves a vocation, something to be proud of. God knows I worried about my son from the moment we got the diagnosis before, really. But after yesterday, I have this sort of lift in my step, thinking about the fact that there's a possibility that we could come up here with Wills. There's a possibility that he could have a school-to-job opportunity or go to college with the help of the Northwest Center. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think really the Northwest Center is going to have to come to us. I think that it's such an amazing, incredible organization that it needs to be worldwide, but we have to start in the States. And that's my commitment after seeing what I saw yesterday to get the word out. And Tom said we don't need Northwest centers, we need people to hire quality people. We need the consciousness to change that people of all abilities deserve and should be, and are great workers, and are on time, and are smart, and have huge hearts. But I said, I really have to say to Tom, who's so humble, we do need Northwest centers, other places, to get the dialogue out there. So I'm going to talk to you about that after this. And what's the most amazing thing is this is a model for the world, for our entire world, and I saw it working. I think that's why I can hardly breathe. It works. And seeing the people online that were doing these packages, I couldn't have told you who was struggling with what, and we all struggle with something. So, and I just think that people aren't going to wake up and understand what's not on their radar. And it's not because, people are uneducated or too busy or they're unkind in any way. It's just that to deny teens, it hasn't been pointed out to them, is what I'm saying. So to deny children and teens and adults the right to be constructive, empowered, and important contributors to society is to not value them as people. And can any of us live with that? I don't want to live with that. I am a mother, an author, a warrior, a wife. I have a spotless house but a filthy car. I love corny music, and this is really terrible based on what I just said, but I have a terrible habit of laughing when people fall down. I've broken my right ankle in the same exact place 5 times in the last 8 years, so don't stand next to me, I'll surely fall down on you. And as you saw, I have the most spectacular son, and his name is Will. When my husband Michael and I first brought Will home from Cedar Sinai, he was perfect, as all our children are, with these enormous cornflower blue eyes, except that he was petrified of everything. His tiny nursery had little sponge stars stamped all over the ceiling, and there were soft, plushy toys in an assortment of yummy colors. But none of this comforted my son. Laughter from my husband, you have to know my husband's a writer for The Simpsons. So we're like born comedians, and laughter from us, and we laugh all the time, sent poor Will into a shrieking, panting mess. Singing happy birthday, some of this might be familiar to you, a tag on the back of his shirt that touched his bare skin seemed to cause Will's agonizing pain. So at 18 months, we took Will to see Catherine, a child psychologist. He studied this therapist like a scientist studies a petri dish, and his strange anxiety was on hold. And then she leaned down to say hello to him, and he actually kissed the tip of her nose, and he had never even kissed me. He knew something I could not have known in that first meeting, that Catherine was about to change everything, that he could trust her, and he was right. Catherine diagnosed Will with autism spectrum disorder, and we were anxious, yet of course we were not surprised. He'd begun obsessing about airplanes and trains, refusing to look at books or toys that didn't involve one or the other. We spent endless hours watching small planes take off from that tiny Van Nuys airport, his heart-shaped face pressed up against the glass. Hours passed as we rode up and down the west coast on the Pacific Surfliner, as you saw in the video, eating baked goldfish and slurping juicy boxes while Will obsessively counted each station we passed, coming and going. He'd also began to rock back and forth while holding his ears, and he hadn't hit a single developmental mark. Faced with Will's diagnosis, I was beyond rattled, but I was determined to attack this head on. And as you saw, I took dynamic action that very day. I bought fish. I didn't stop there. As you saw, we adopted turtles, hamsters, a feisty, obese rabbit, dumpy frogs. We had turtles named Richard, a land turtle named Richard, who is really old now, but had known I adopted him, how old he really was. But buying hamsters and fish was comforting and a lot of fun. And building that chicken coop, which we actually, it's sort of standing, it kept us laughing, planning our next project. But I surely was avoiding the real issue. I was, as Tom said, frightened. I was avoiding Will's autism. So when we got to the diagnosis, I knew I had to quit building hutches and face reality. And I knew I had to do it now. I hunted down every book on autism I could lay my hands on, including Temple Grandin's Thinking in Pictures, which is such a tremendous book, especially for new parents, our newly diagnosed parents of a newly diagnosed child or family member. And from my reading, I learned how to communicate with Will and how to turn down the volume in his world. Catherine's therapist taught me how much Will needed repetition and structure in his life, so I hung scheduling boards and giant calendars on the family room wall. If there were changes in our daily schedule, I tried to let him know right away so it wouldn't throw him and not surprise him if I could help it. But one of Will's most significant improvements came when my husband and I finally learned to narrate his feelings for him. Wow, I see you're really angry by the way you're squeezing that toy, or you look really worried about going into that restaurant. It was so simple, but articulating what I was seeing, even if I was wrong, would help Will to eventually do the same things for himself. I mean, at least that was the hope. And it might sound like a small adjustment, but the results, they were anything but small. Will didn't always snap back to the present, but he turned his head toward us to know he was listening. He was there. He wanted to be seen, and he wanted to hear. The single most difficult and important thing we did was to keep Will kicking and screaming, was to take Will out into the world. When we were home, he was really, really happy. But when we were out in the world, he wasn't very happy at all. If I had a place like the center to take Will, a place where other families were experiencing the same worries and digesting the same diagnostic news, I wouldn't have felt so alone. But it was shattering seeing him sobbing and covering his ears at preschool, or racing to hide under a table trying to negotiate a child's birthday party. But Catherine assured us that he needed to be part of the world, and this is where the center really comes in, to be with other children, all kinds of children, so that he could help model their behavior. But what I didn't understand at the time was also so they could model his behavior as well. Slowly but steadily, things began to shift for the better, and Will learned to tolerate his preschool classroom. But as he began to grow, I realized we were going to need a lot more support of a loving community. And again, that's what you have here in one place in the center, where we were looking all over Los Angeles for it, well, all over the country for it, actually. After being turned down by 12 private schools, and we only applied to 12, and I remember being in my sweatpants and going, oh my gosh, all of us want to be emotionally safe. That's all we wanted in the school. It was to be emotionally safe. So I called Neil and he said they were full. They couldn't take Will. And so I said that I will get a trailer and I will park it outside the school and I will homeschool Will outside Children's Community School and wave to him every day and say, we're still here, we're waiting, please accept us. Luckily for us, well, there were two things too, I should say. They had never accepted a child with autism that was so severe that he was needing an aid in the classroom. So this would be a first. So I think they were nervous about that, but when they saw the determination, and I was determined, he said, we'll try it. I can't guarantee that Will will make it here, that he'll be able to stay. So, lucky for us, they opened their doors wide. And what happened when we integrated Will into that mainstream environment was that not only did the other children help him learn, in fact, he would lie on his side, lie or lay. As an author, I never get lie or lay correct. On his side and stare sort of off into space or cry, and the other students were wondering what was going on with Will. So the teacher said, you know, Will's having a really hard time separating from his mom and dad and coming to school. And he just wants to be on his side. So then these kids started scooting closer to him, which he liked, and he didn't move. And this little girl named Lily, like 3 weeks in, took a finger puppet and was like, hi, Lily. And he started to laugh. And it was the first time he had shown sort of anything. He hadn't been able to go to the potty there. He hadn't been able to get his lunch because he was so anxious. And so the school, with that moment, they called me, and I ran over to hear it from the office that this had happened. They decided that not only could Will stay, but that they were excited about having an autistic child at their school because there was a real value to be gained, if I have to put it so. Well, no, it is a value to be gained for the other students as well. He wouldn't be taken away from the classroom. What he was doing was giving back because they were being very empathetic. They were helping him write his name. He taught them how to make really complicated paper airplanes. He's brilliant at math. He was great at math at 4, but by the time he got to kindergarten at 6, he had it down. And he fascinated them with the fact that he knew the entire Chicago L line. And he knew all the colors, of course, because there's the purple line, the brown line. So, conclusion, drew the line in the sand that my son was never going to be alone in school. He was never going to sit at the table and cry without help. He would never be alone in the world, and he was not going to be ashamed of who he was. And the school was not going to be worried and ashamed about what was going to happen by admitting a child with autism into a mainstream classroom. The other parents started to embrace the fact that we were there. And I'm happy to say, I'm thrilled to say, if I could do a cartwheel, I think I probably still could, I don't know, that they admit regularly now children with all different kinds of abilities to this school, autism and otherwise. It's a school, it's an all-inclusive school, thanks to them being open enough to take Wills, which is an amazing thing. I guess I'll just quickly say something about cowboys, since we saw the video, and I know the books are out there, and his name's Cowboy Carol Lawrence. So the cavalry now had a furry mascot, and for the first time in his life, I mean, this was really life-changing for Will too. Maybe we should get animals at the center. I hate to say it, no, but anyway, see what I can do, Tom. I'll bring up the golden retrievers. For the first time in his life, with Cowboy tucked in beside Will's arm and paw, you saw it on the video, he didn't have night terrors. He slept through the night in his own bed without coming into us. He's also taken his first relaxing bath because when one afternoon he was in there crying and sad about the bubbles, all of a sudden Cowboy burst through the bathroom door like Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter. She was in. She dove to the bathtub with him. Will hated bath. I was disgusted because she's dirty and hairy. And he asked for the Johnson's Baby shampoo. And I'm like, absolutely, whatever you do, Johnson's Baby. He shampooed the dog, and 2 hours later I pulled out one soggy and one hairy kid and a dripping wet dog. And I never had a problem with the bath after that. And I never told anybody for a long time that my son bathed with dirty dogs. But, look, she said, all I see is this wonderful boy. I can teach him. Vanessa began teaching Will to read and write, with handwriting without tears. She taught him to touch math, which was great for him, and to relax in this little classroom that she built behind her house. So I had my first clue, and I'm almost done. I had my first clue that Will was picking up words when I accidentally inserted November into the month slot on the calendar on our family room wall. And when I walked by and saw my mistake, I turned around to grab December, but Will's was already holding it. Do you want to put that up, I asked? He inserted December right over November. I sat down on the floor so my face was even with his. Hey, good job, buddy, I told him. It's Christmas almost, he said. It felt just like Christmas. Doctors can be wrong. I knew now to never underestimate my child. And that was the beginning of my advocacy. I never stopped advocating for him, not for a second after that. Will's team is growing bigger. He began recognizing street names and reading the times on the Amtrak surplus because that's what meant something to him. Those things were real. Will started 3rd grade. He was doing better, and Cowboy was doing worse. For such a young dog, she wasn't acting as peppy and wild. Her health, in fact, finally failing. So sadly, Cowboy died 2.5 years to the day we picked her up, leaving us shocked, and Will's was flattened. She'd gone to school with him every single afternoon. His friends and family gathered around. He would not be grieving alone. Wills told his classmates how sad he was. He let the other children hug him, and he didn't flinch or draw back because he knew that they loved Cowboy too. He folded himself into their arms while they all cried, allowing himself to be vulnerable and deeply wounded in front of his peers, trusting that they would understand. And that was Cowboy's parting gift to Will. My son is 16 now, and like me, doesn't go anywhere without a book. This week he's reading A Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night. And after I hugged that 6'3" enormous kid good night, he still lets me hug him. I don't even kiss him anymore. Yes, sneak him in. And I start down the hall and I turn around and I see that light in his room flip back on. And he has to be up at 6, and it's 12. I don't worry, because he's happy, and my son is reading. He's learning about this big, great, noisy, messy world on his own through books. And I'm going to conclude by saying my hopes and dreams for Wills, because this goes right back to the center, of which I'm madly in love with, if you haven't already been able to tell. My hopes and dreams for Wills are that he'd be happy and lead a successful life, whatever that means for him. I hope that he feels valued each and every day, and that he also values people around him. He still loves trains and planes, that's never wavered, nor does he ever stop drawing and creating new maps. So I hope these interests and these passions are included in his career choice, because I have to believe that he will have a career choice. What parent could or would think otherwise? I honor my son, and I thank you for letting me do that by telling his story. By visiting the Northwest Center, I honor his future by learning about endless possibilities if we change the world right now to include Will, to include all people. We change life as we know it. And as I said earlier, I'm beyond lucky because I have a child with autism. I have to change the world. Thank you so much.